All right, good morning, good chodesh to everyone. We're going to start today with the daf. So we're picking up today on daf Yud Zayin, Amud Aleph. So the shir is dedicated by Michael and the Elman and the Schus of the Refuah Shalema for Moshe Shapira, Moshe ben Rachel. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah we have a complete and enduring refuah.
Amen.
So let's begin. A beautiful Gemara today, starting with the Mishnah on the top of Yud Zayin. So the Mishnah says, Balo lichtovas hamagillah. So remember again, the nature of the last couple of Mishnayos is that we're walking through the entire progression of Sotah. So at this point in time, at least according to the chronology of the Mishnayos, she has offered already her karban mincha. So at this point in time, remember, although we saw an earlier machlokes about what exactly triggers the waters, whether it's the drinking of the water or the giving of the mincha, at this point in time now that we're past the mincha, we're actually moving into the actual preparation of the water. So remember again, the mace sotah themselves are prepared. We've already spoken about, you take the water, the earthenware vial, you go ahead, you fill it up with water from the kiyar, you take dirt from the floor of the Beis Hamikdash, and now at this point in time, what actually activates the waters, or I should say what gives them their potency, is the fact that you're going to have Parsha Sotah written on a piece of parchment, and you're going to dissolve it in the water itself. The shaila now the Mishnah is going to deal with is how much of Parshas Sotah is actually written on the parchment. So the Mishnah says, so when they come to write, they call it the Megillah, but of course in this context it doesn't literally mean scroll. What it means is they're coming to write that piece of parchment that is going to be dissolved in the waters. From where, how much of the psukim, how many of the psukim do we actually write? So the first opinion in the Mishnah, which will identify as the Tanakama, which the Gemara is going to identify as Rabbi Meir, says the following: Meivim lo shachav ish va'at kisatis tachas isheich. So say, if you have, most of the new Gemaras have the psukim written in the margin. So you have, it's called the Torah or. So if you look over here, you should have a little letter Aleph that directs you to the psukim in the margin. So here you can see the Torah says, Vishbiya osa kohen va'amar ela isha. The kohen will administer an oath to her, and he says to the woman, Im lo shachav ish osach. If another man did not sleep with you, v'im lo satis, and you did not stray, v'im lo satis tumatachas isheich, you did not engage in any kind of impurity, you did not engage in any kind of defilement with another man while married to your husband, you should go ahead and be cleansed from any of the negative effects of this water. So that's the first part. And then again, back to the Mishnah for just a moment. Then it says, "V'hishpia esa isha, ve'ino kosei v'hishpia esa isha." According to Rabbi Meir, interestingly enough, you skip around in the parsha of Sotah a little bit. So you write, this first part we will see is actually a positive statement. This positive statement is, essentially, if you did not commit adultery, then the waters will not have an impact on you. So according to Rabbi Meir, you write that on the parchment. According to Rabbi Meir, you omit the phrases, the Torah, you omit the instructions. So for example, when the Torah says that the kohen will administer an oath to the woman, you don't write that on the actual parchment, and then you continue, v'kosev, yitin Hashem osach la'ala ushua, ubal hamayim hamaorim ha'ila b'me'echa, litzbos batan v'lan pil yarech. And then you continue to write the actual curse. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give you a curse, the water should come in literally b'me'echa, into your insides, to distend your stomach, to cause your thigh to collapse. Ve'eno kosev va'amra ha'isha amen amen. But he does not write in that parsha, and the woman shall answer amen. So essentially, according to Rabbi Meir, according to Tanakama, you include all of the curses. Both of the curses that are explicit curses, as well as the curses that are inferred curses. Inferred curses means that when the Torah says something positive, if you did not commit adultery, these waters will not impact you. So there is an implied curse in that, which is that if you did commit adultery, these waters will hurt you. So according to Rabbi Meir, you write everything with the exception of instructions and with the exception of the woman's response. That's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi Omer, lo haya mafsik. I will say, interestingly enough, Rabbi Yossi says, you write the entire parsha. Now, what does that mean, you write the entire parsha? If you look at Rashi, he says, Lo haya mafsik, misha hischil, and lo shachav ish osach, ad amen v'amen, ad amen amen, shaya kosef tzava, devishpia koines haisha v'kabala deva amra haisha amen amen. So according to Rabbi Yossi, you write the entire section of Sotah in its entirety. In its entirety, including, again, bless you, including the instructions as well as the response of the woman herself. Fine. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol atzma ina kol safe. Rabbi Yehuda says, I disagree with both of you, and I think you write actually much less. What do you write? You only write, Ella yitain Hashem osach. Yitain Hashem osach. La'Allah u'l'shvua. According to Rabbi Yehuda, all you write in the Megillah Sotah, in this piece of parchment, is the actual curse itself. That if you go ahead and you have committed adultery, that these waters ultimately again will be a curse in your stomach, in your thigh. So we'll say Rabbi Yehuda holds that first of all you omit the positive statements in the beginning, you omit the instructions, all you write in there is the actual curse itself, and you also omit the response of the woman herself. So we'll say three-way machlokes between Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yehuda. Again, Rabbi Meir is saying pretty much you write the entire Parsha Sotah, both the quote-unquote positive statements as well as the curses. The only thing you omit are the instructions and the woman's response. According to Rabbi Yossi, no. Once you begin to write this section, you write the section in its entirety. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, all you write is the actual curse itself. Says the Gemara, so what are they arguing about? To which the Gemara answers, they're actually arguing in terms of how to interpret a pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'kasav es ha'alos ha'ila." The pasuk says you will go ahead and write these curses. Again, it says, "V'kasav es ha'alos ha'ila b'hakoin b'sefer umacha al me'amarim." So the Kohen will write these curses in a book, literally on a piece of parchment, and he will erase these curses in the water itself. So the Gemara says like this. So we'll say what the Gemara is picking up on is, it doesn't say v'kasav alos eila, rather it says v'kasav ha'alos ha'ela. These with a hey hayidi in front of both words. So the Gemara says Rabbi Meir savar alos mamish. So we'll say, remember, so Rabbi Meir's shita is the word alos. Of course, teaches us that in the parchment of Sotah you write the actual curses. Ha'alos, the extra hay, lerabos, klalos, habaos, machmas, brachos. So also the extra a is a ribui. That ribui comes to include literally curses that are inferred from blessings. What does that mean about saying? Remember, Parsha Sotah opens up with a positive statement. Then it says, if you did not engage in adultery, then ultimately, hinaki, you will be cleansed from any of the negative effects of the waters. So according to Meir, alos teaches me that I have to write the curses. Ha'alos, the extra hay, teaches me that what? That I have to add in the curses that are inferred from the blessings. Eila, the word eila, Lime'ute klalos sheva Mishnah Torah. It will say Eila comes to exclude that I do not write the curses that are found in Devarim. And I will say, now what does that mean, the curses that are found in Devarim? So remember again, in Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu administers a general series of curses for individuals who violate the precepts of the Torah. So I might have thought that those curses should be included over here. Because again, even though this is specifically adultery, she has violated the precepts of the Torah. Therefore, Eila teaches me that he only writes ha'alos ha'ila, these curses associated specifically with Sotah, but does not go ahead and record the curses that are written in Devarim. Ha'ela, what does ha'ela come to teach me? Lemeute tzavaos v'kabalos amen. Ha'ela, the extra hay, comes to include something else that I exclude, namely the tzavaos. The tzavaos also refer to the commands to the Kohen, telling the Kohen exactly what to do at each part of this process, and kabalos amen, and the woman's response to the shvuah of the Kohen, where she says amen. So we'll say that's Shitas Rabbi Meir. Fine. Rabbi Yossi, Kula Kidika Amrat. So Rabbi Yossi pretty much agrees in principle with Rabbi Meir, except for with one addition. He says es lerabos kabalos v'tzavos. Rabbi Yossi says the word es, which is also a ribui, although not everybody darshans it, but es, which is also ribui, es, which is also a word that comes to include additional things, that comes to include savaos v'kabalos, that comes to include the instructions to the Kohen, as well as the response of the woman of amen the amen. So the Gemara goes weiter. Rabbi Meir. How does Rabbi Meir darshan? Remember, Rabbi Meir was the first opinion. So the Gemara is now asking, why doesn't Rabbi Meir paskin like Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Meir esin lo darish. Rabbi Meir doesn't darshan a s. This we saw before. I say. Remember again, not everybody darshans s as a riboy, as an inclusionary word, as something additional. So therefore, again, because Rabbi Meir doesn't darshan it, he disagrees with Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda. So what does Rabbi Yehuda darshan? He says kulu b'mi'uti darish. Interestingly enough, Rabbi Yehuda understands. I will say, see, here's what's interesting. Unlike Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir, the common denominator in their shitas are that they both hold that the extra hays, ha'alos, ha'ila, are inclusionary phrases. They come to go ahead and include something else. And again, Rabbi Yossi takes it a step further. He says S also comes to include something. Rabbi Yehuda understands it totally differently. Rabbi Yehuda understands that the hey is actually what? An exclusionary phrase or an exclusionary letter. What does this mean? Rabbi Yehuda darshans all of this as a miut. Alos mamish. When the pasuk says that they write the alos, the curses for the Megillah Sotah, for the parchment, so it literally means the actual curses themselves of Sotah. Ha-alos, the extra hay comes along. Lemeute klalos habaos machmas brachos. That comes to exclude the curses that are inferred from the blessings. Eila, lemeute klalos of Mishnah Torah. Eila comes to exclude the additional klalos, the additional curses that are written in Chumash Devarim. Ha'ila, the extra hay there, lemeute tzavaos v'kabalos, comes to exclude the instructions given to the Kohen, as well as the woman's recitation of Amen va'Amen. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Meir, Maishna hai hey de marbi bey, u Maishna hai hey de miet bey. So I'll say, interestingly enough, the Gemara now asks, in Rabbi Meir's Shita, why is it that in one case, let's say by hay, the hay comes to include something additional? Right? Remember, according to Rabbi Meir, the hay of ha'alos comes to teach you that in the actual paragraph of Sotah, you include not just the explicit curses, but also the curses that are inferred from the positive statements. And yet, umayshna hayhe demait be. And yet, why is it that by the word ha'alos, Rabbi Meir learns that out, that ha'alos comes to what? Exclude the curses written in Devarim. So what the Gemara is asking over here, it's a fascinating shaila. What the Gemara is asking over here is, so far everyone's kind of been, consistent in their shitos. We've assumed that according to Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi, that hay is coming to include something additional. Rabbi Yehuda has a dramatically different sheet, and Rabbi Yehuda holds that the hays are actually coming to exclude. What the Gemara now is asking is on Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir, again, at the end of the day, is saying that the hay of ha'alos comes to include an additional set of curses that are inferred from positive commandments, but yet the hay of ha'ila ultimately comes to exclude the klalos in Devarim. So what's the pshat? How could it be that in one case hey is a riboy, is an inclusionary word or inclusionary letter, and yet in a second case, hey is an exclusionary letter? To which the Gemara says, it's not such a shayla. The Gemara says, digabe ribuya, hey digabe ribuya hi, hey digabe dimiuta, meutehi. So I'll say, to which the Gemara says, what Rabbi Yossi, I should say Rabbi Meir, is not focused on generating one rule. What he does is he understands the hay based on the context. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Telagabe ribuye. So remember again. So when Rabbi Meir sees the hay, for example, in a place where it seems to expound or it seems to be an inclusionary letter, telagabe ribuye, deha'alos dekai avekasov. So remember again, when it says ha'alos, so I will say ha'alos is referring to things that are written down in the actual scroll. So therefore, again, it makes sense that because we're already talking about things that are written down, the hay over there comes to include additional things that you write down. On the other hand, delagabe miut, eile demiuta ha'eile velo acheros. But yet, Rabbosai, again, lemaisa, in the other cases where it says ha'eile, so ha'eile, again, remember, always refers to things Ha'ila is always an exclusionary phrase. Therefore, I will say what Rabbi Meir essentially says is the following. What Rabbi Meir says is that halacha lemaisa, there is no one rule for hey. When hey is written in the context where the word itself is a ribui, then the hey amplifies that ribui. Like, for example, ha'alos. Ha'alos is talking about the things that you're writing. Once we're talking about the things that you're including, the hey comes to teach you that what? That you include additional things. On the other hand, when the word that you're looking at is a miyut, it's coming to limit, therefore the hey amplifies that limitation. And so, for example, the hey teaches you that it's only these curses and not other curses. Okay, so the Gemara says, vaha leslie Rabbi Meir, michla lav ata shomeahin. But I will say, here's the problem. You see, Rabbi Meir's shita is that in the Megillah Sotah, not only do you include the curses that are explicit, but you also include the curses that are inferred from the positive statements. It says the Gemara, we have Rabbi Meir elsewhere on record as saying that that we don't say mechla lav ata shomeahin, that you do not go ahead and infer positive statements from negative statements. I will say, now, where do we know that from? Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. It's actually quite interesting. Disnan Rabbi Meir Omer, Kol Tanai Sheinu Ketanai B'nei Gad B'nei Ruvain, Eino Tanai D'chsiv Bei Im Ya'avru Ve'im Lo Ya'avru. Supposed to listen to this. We learn out the concept of a Tanai, of a proper condition from B'nai Gad and B'nai Ruvain. Remember again, B'nai Gad and B'nai Ruvain are settling the Transjordanian lands. Moshe Rabbeinu makes a deal with them. The lands are yours, but you must go ahead and go to battle with Klal Yisrael to conquer the rest of Eretz Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, if you go to war with your people, then these lands will be yours. If you don't go to war with these people, then the lands will not be yours. The Gemara is intrigued by the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu felt compelled to state this in the positive and in the negative. Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that you see from here that in order for a Tanai, in order for a condition to be binding, it has to be what's called a Tanai kafel, a doubled Tanai, which means that you must state the Tanai in the positive and you must state the Tanai in the negative. Now that's Shitas Rabbi Meir. Now, the reason you hold that shita, what I will say, is in order to make the Tanai as explicit as possible. Because you require that level of explicitness that indicates to you that under general circumstances, you do not go ahead and infer negative things from positive statements. If that's the case, then why is it that Rabbi Meir goes ahead and says over here that the positive statements are included in the Megillah Sotah? Because he's saying over here that means that because they're really curses. Because even though they're positive statements, if you didn't do anything wrong, then the waters will not hurt you. Even though that sounds like a positive statement, in reality we're inferring from that a curse. But Rabbi Meir is the one who says that we do not infer negative statements from positive ones, or vice versa. Everything must be stated explicitly. If that's the case, then why are the positive statements recorded in the parchment of the Sotah? To which the Gemara says, this is very interesting. Hinaki, listen to this, because the Torah uses the word hinaki. Now, I will say hinaki literally means what? Literally means you shall be cleansed. Now, I will say, take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, Amra bitanchum hinaki ksiv below yud. First of all, interestingly enough, it's written without the yud. Demishtama hinki imlo shachav v'sidrosh hachi tomatachas isheich chinki. So also listen to this, bless you. So the way the Gemara, Rabbi Tanchum says like this, the word hinaki is written chaser, it's written deficient, which means if you were writing that word, you really would have written in hey yud nun kuf yud. So because it's written without a yud, without the nekudos, it would be vocalized as how? Hinki, which is very similar to the word what? Chinki. Chinki means to choke. So Rabbi Tanchum says that already embedded in that positive statement is already a lashon of klala. It's already a lashon of a curse, saying that ultimately, again, yes, if you didn't do anything, you'll be cleansed. But if you did something, that hinki turns into what? Turns into a chinki. Ultimately, turns into a choking. Therefore, again, interesting enough, what the Gemara is as saying is that according to Rabbi Meir, you're not really inferring anything. According to Rabbi Meir, he actually feels that the curse itself is written explicitly in the Torah, in the section of the positive statement. So again, even though the statement itself is positive, nevertheless, again, because the word itself could be so easily vocalized, because remember also, biblical Hebrew, hey and ches in many contexts are also interchangeable. So Lamais, again, he feels that word connoting the punishment is right there, therefore it's included in Parashat Sotah. So I suggest, okay, so here, the Gemara starts with this machlokes, just so you know, the way that the Rambam paskins is like Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah, the first opinion in the Mishnah. Namely, that in Parashat Sotah, we write the curses, the actual curses, we write the positive statements from which you can infer curses, and essentially we write everything with the exception of instructions to the Kohen and the response of the woman. That's how the Rambam paskins. So we'll say how the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Darish Rabbi Akiva. So we'll say the Gemara gives a little bit of Agarata now. Darish Rabbi Akiva is actually a very beautiful Gemara. Ish v'isha, if you have a man and woman together, zachu, if they are meritorious, meaning if they are privileged. Now we'll say, interesting enough, what does zachu mean? Rashi says, Lalechas b'derech yishara shelo yehehu noif ve'lo hino efes. So if they are privileged to have a good marriage, right? Zachu, they're virtuous people. How does Rashi define virtuous over here? Neither is committing adultery. Okay, so if both of them are faithful to one another, shchina beinehem, then the shchina remains in their marriage. Again, if there's moral purity within a marriage, then ultimately the Shekhinah, divine presence, is there. Lo zachu, but if chas v'shalom, again, there's a lack of morality in the marriage, then they do not merit to have HaKadosh Baruch Hu between them. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not there, then what? Eish ochlasan. Then ultimately, again, a fire consumes them. But say, take a look at Rashi. Shechina beinehem. What does it mean that if a man and woman are privileged to are zochu? What does it mean they have the Shechina between them? Look at Rashi. Shari Shechina beinehem. Shari chalak eshmo v'shichno beinehem. Yud beish vehe beisha. Remember again, because the name of God is embedded in Ish and Isha. For Ish, she has the Yud of the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For Isha, she has the Hey. So if there's peace between them, then the Shechina, right? The Shechina remains there. There's the Yod and the Hey. If the Lo Zahu, and again, this is very interesting that Rashi is defining Zahu over here as not committing adultery, which is just the context here. So if Lamaisa, again, they're not Zocha, if they don't maintain proper morality in their marriage, then what happens? Then look at Rashi, Lo Zachu Ishoch Lasan. What does it mean if they're not Zocha, then a fire consumes them? Simply, Shakadosh Baruch Hu Misalik Shmo Beinehem. God removes his name from them. Now remember, if God removes his name, removes the Yud from man and the Hey from woman, so what's left? V'nimtzu Eish ve'esh. Then all that is left is fire. All that is left is destructiveness. Ultimately, again, unfortunately, they'll destroy themselves and they'll destroy one another. We'll say it's just an incredible yisod in general. Even outside of the morality piece, you see that a marriage requires a strong spiritual underpinning and a strong spiritual foundation. Because without HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a marriage, without HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a home, really all there is Eish. All there is fire, which ultimately is only koach is destructiveness. So the Gemara says, Amarava, Udi isha adifa midi ish. And Rava says, literally, if you look at Rashi, Udi isha adifa midi ish, Eish shal isha kasha, the fire of a woman is more intense. Umimaheres le'acha v'li para mishal ish, and has the ability to consume in a greater way and to go ahead and cause her to be culpable more than a man. So where does the Gemara get that from? Ultimately, again, because in a man's name, in Ish, the letters Ish, Aleph, Shin are separated by the Yud. For an Isha, her Ish is there already. There just happens to be a Hey at the end. So interestingly enough, Rava holds that the Good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld. You snuck in over here. Right? Snuck in. So what, did you crawl under the tables? I didn't see you come in. So what happens? So again, remember, so for a woman, Rava says that her Ish is more intense because her Ish is always there. Her fire is always present, as opposed ultimately again to the Ish, where his Ish is separated by the Yud between the two letters. Amarava, sorry. So the Gemara says, my timer, ha mitzarif, ha lo mitzarif. So why is that? Because again, in a man, I should say in an isha, the letters of Aish are already next to each other, as opposed to in a man where the letters ultimately of Aish are separated by the Yud. We'll say this is an incredible, now this is a good Sheva Brachas Vart, but don't do it according to Rashi, right? And it says, so again, the Vart is a beautiful one without the Znus piece, right? The idea, and again, it's incredible, and it's not just like a cutesy thing. You see what Chazal are saying is that at the end of the day, because understand that it's so easy for marriage to turn into me. It's all about me. Everything is about me. So that's an Aish. That becomes a fire of destructiveness. If there's not Avodas Hashem, the whole essence of Avodas Hashem teaches you to be a selfless individual. The highest value in Judaism, really the highest value, is selflessness, is living for the other. That's what we aspire for. And the truth is, that is the key to successful marriage, being a selfless individual. See if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there, then you learn the midah of selflessness, because that's what Avodas Hashem is. I put my needs on the side, and I put the Ribono Shel Olam's needs first. So if I'm able to do that for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hopefully I'm able to do that for a Basar V'Dam as well. But if I'm not a selfless Jew, if I'm not selfless for God, then I'm not selfless for the other also. So if the Ribono Shel Olam is not in my life, he's not in my marriage, all there is Aish. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara is a beautiful Gemara. Darsh Rava Darshan B'schar Amar Avram Avinu Va'anochi Afar Ve'efer. Because Avram Avinu said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, an incredible expression of humility, I am but dust and ashes. Zochu Bonov Lebeis Mitzvos. His children were given 2 mitzvos concerning dust, concerning ashes. What were they? Efer Para Va'afar Sotah. They were given the merit of Para Aduma, the ashes of the Para Aduma, and the dust of the Sotah. Both say again, you'll say to yourself, what kind of merit is the dust of the Sotah? So the Maisa again, because it is the way that we maintain a moral purity within the home. But there's another dust as well. I'm sorry. Thank you. Sotah. Thank you. Have they offer the Sotah? So why is it that the Torah says that we go ahead and we use afar, we use dirt for the Sotah? Zachsa, because if she's meritorious, meaning if she did not commit adultery, Yotza Mimena Ben Ka'Avram Avinu, it's pretty intense. She's merits to have a child like as great as Avram Avinu, Dichsiv Bey, Afar Ve'efer, who said about himself, I am but dust and ashes. Lo Zachsa, if she did not merit, Tachzor La'afra, then ultimately she returns to dust. She dies. Darish Rava Darshan, B'schar Shamar Avram Avinu Va'anochi Afar Ve'efer, because Avram Avinu said, because he said in the merit of saying, of an incredible expression of humility, and saying that I am but dust and ashes, Zachu Banov Lebeis Mitzvos. His children merited receiving 2 mitzvos. What are the 2 mitzvos? Efer Para, Va'afar Sotah, literally the dust of the Para Aduma, or should say the ashes of the Para Aduma, and the dust of the Sotah. But 1 second, there's another dust as well. The other dust is, remember again, the dirt that covers the blood, kisei adam, like we saw yesterday. Hasam hechsher mitzvahika hana aleka. There again is what the Gemara calls hechsher mitzvah. So again, you cover up the blood because that's the obligation, but there's no direct hana. There's no direct benefit. Meaning again, from para aduma, you get you become tahar. From Sotah, you're able to go ahead and maintain purity in the home. Kisei adam is a mitzvah, but there's no quote unquote hana. There's nothing I get from it. Look at Rashi, leka hana leka ve'ein ze kibul schar. Avalkan yeshana besota lase shalom shelo yirba mamzerim b'Yisrael. So by sota again, remember it creates shalom, and there shouldn't be a proliferation of mamzerim. Im zonehi b'miksav in Israel zero mevat lalaz me'abaneha ve'efra para l'taran ulazakos from ma'aseh egel. So also the Gemara says like this: by offer sota maintains purity, moral purity within the ranks of Klal Yisrael, and ultimately again we'll see that if she's pregnant with a mamzer, she and that child died to prevent the proliferation of mamzerim, which is a significant genealogical challenge for Klal Yisrael. And by paraduma, interesting, Rashi says paraduma does 2 things. Paraduma is mitaher, it purifies, and paraduma is mechaper for the cheta egel. It atones for the sin of the golden calf. Quite amazing. You never think about it in that context. But lamaisa, again, by kisei hadam, as much as I perform a mitzvah, there's no quote unquote hana. So the Gemara goes weiter. Darash Rava. B'schar she'amra Avram Avinu imichut va'atzoroch now zachu banav lebeis mitzvos. In the merit of Avram Avinu saying this was to Melech Sdom, right? When Melech Sdom got back all of his stuff, so Melech Sdom wanted to reward Avram Avinu for his valiant efforts in the war. So Avram Avinu says, imichut, I'm not going to take a shoelace or up from a string to a shoe buckle, I'm not going to take from you. Zachu banav lebeis mitzvos. Avram's children, we were privileged to receive 2 mitzvos. What were the 2 mitzvos? Chut shel tcheles, the tcheles in the tzitzis, right? Literally the string of tzitzis. Uritzua shel tefillin, and the strap ultimately of tefillin. So both say again, Avram Avinu said chut, I'm not going to take even a string, so we get the chut of tcheles. Sroch now literally means like a shoe strap, right? And therefore we got the ritzua of tefillin. Bishlam ritzua shel tefillin dechsev. I understand why we merited tefillin, because by tefillin it says v'ra'u kol amei haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha, because the pasuk says the nations of the world will see that the name of God is literally stated upon you. V'tanya Rabbi Elazar Hagadol Omer Elu tefillin shebarosh. So Rabbi Elazar Hagadol said this refers to tefillin shebarosh, that ultimately again when a Jew wears tefillin, that tefillin ultimately inspires fear. It will inspire fear in the nations of the world. So I understand why that's where Avram Avinu had moral courage and did not want to take the money of Melech Sdom. So therefore again, Baruch Hu gives him tefillin. But again, what benefit is there in the chut of tcheles? Let's listen to this. The Sanyar Hayir Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir said, "Man nishtana tcheles mikol tzivonin." Why is it? Why tcheles? Right? Why the blue? Why is it that why did Baruch Hu choose this color more than other colors? Because tcheles is comparable to the sea. V'yam dome l'rakia, and ultimately the sea is comparable to the sky. V'rakia dome l'kisei hakavod, and the rakia, the sky, is comparable to the kisei hakavod, to the throne of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But I see, you see over here, what tcheles does is that tcheles reminds you of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi say it's an incredible musar. So why don't you just say tcheles dome l'kisei hakavod? Why don't you just say that? Because the answer is that in Ruchnius you have to grow in stages. You have to grow in steps. If a person tries to go from here to the kisei hakavod, they're going to fall flat on their face. But if I go from here and I connect to the sea, and from the sea I connect to the heavens, and from the heavens I connect to the kisei hakavod, then over time, after a series of smaller steps, a person will be privileged to grow in their ruchnius. An incredible yisod. Sometimes people go ahead and set their goals all the way up here, and I'm all the way down here. It's too far of a distance to be able to bridge initially. But if I'm here, and I set a goal here, and then I set a goal here, and then I set a goal here, knowing that I want to get here, well, at the end of the day, I'll get there. So the pasuk says, Shene Emar Vayiru es Elokei Yisrael v'tachas raglav k'maaseh libnas hasapir. So once again, because the Gemara now here quotes the pasuk from Shemos, that literally by Matan Torah, that they saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whatever this means, they saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and underneath his feet was like sapphire brickwork. Uke'etzem hashamayim latohar, and the essence of the sky, the essence of the heavens was total purity. Uksiv kemare even sapir demus kisei, and also the pasuk says that it is like a sapphire that the kisei hakavod appears like. So we'll say again, beautiful, beautiful agarata. I want to share with you something magnificent on that agarata, but I first want to finish the Gemara, then we're going to go back. So it says the Mishnah, Eino kosef lo ala luach v'lo ala niyar v'lo ala diftra. Now we'll say, now we're going to talk about l'maisa, what can you write the actual paragraph of Sotah on, meaning what type of material. So you can't write it on a board of wood, you can't write it on a piece of wood, you can't write it on niyar. Now niyar in this context, of course, doesn't actually mean paper, rather niyar means papyrus. Velo ala diftera, you can't write it on diftera. Diftera is unprocessed or not fully processed parchment. Only we'll call it partially processed parchment. Ella ala Megillah. You have to write it. Megillah in this context of also means a fully processed piece of parchment. Shene Emar Basefer. Because the pasuk says that you have to write the Parsha Sotah Basefer. Sefer always means finished parchment. Ve'ino kosev lo bekumus, v'lo bekan konsum. You can't write a kumus. We'll discuss this, but kumus means like gum, a gum base. V'lo bekan konsum. Kan konsum is another type of ink. V'lo bechol davar shroshim. I will say the common denominator of kumus and kan konsum is they're permanent inks. So obviously we don't want a permanent ink because unless we want it to dissolve into the water. Ella b'dio. Rather, what do you write it with? You write it with dio. Shene emar umacha, because the pasuk says that it has to be erased. So because it has to be erased, you have to write it with a type of ink that can be erased. Ksav sheyachal imachos. It has to be the type of ink that could be erased. Says the Gemara, Amarava, Megillah Sotah shekasva balayla psula. If you write the parsha of Sotah, if you write this paragraph, if you write this section on the parchment at night, it is puzzle. How do we know this? My taima. Asya Torah. We make a Gzir Shava of Torah. What's a Gzir Shava? Ksiv Hacha. It says over here, Va'asala Kohen Eskala Torah Hazos. By Sotah, it says the Kohen will perform for this entire Torah. Ksiv Hasam, and it says over there, Al Pia Torah Sheyarucha Va'ala Mishpat. The pasuk says, speaking about the concept of listening to Beis Din and listening to Chachamim, so the Torah says you shall go ahead based on the Torah that they will instruct you and the laws that they will show you. Ma mishpat bayom, so we'll say it's Gzir Shava of Torah. So ma mishpat bayom, just like Beis Din only adjudicates cases by day, af Megillah Sotah bayom, so you can only write the parsha of Sotah by day as well. Kasva lemafreya psula. If you write the parsha of Sotah lemafreya, meaning let's say you write the psukim out of order. I will say now in this context over here, what you're doing is, let's say I know exactly that the fifth pasuk goes 5 lines down, so I'm writing the fifth pasuk, then the first pasuk. So when I'm finished with it, it'll read like a regular paragraph of Sotah, but I'm writing the psukim themselves out of order. So the halacha is the parsha of Sotah, it's possible. Tichsiv v'kasav es ha'olos ha'ela, you have to go ahead and write these curses. Ki diksiva. Rabbi says the Gemara darshans that ultimately, again, ha'ela means in the way that they are written in the Torah. Kasva kodum shetekaba ala shvua. If he writes the parsha of Sotah before she swears about her innocence, psula, then the parsha of Sotah is possible. Shne emar v'ishbia v'achar kach v'kasav. Because in the order of psukim the Torah, it says first he administers the oath, then you write it. Kasva igeres psula. If you write it as an igeres also means on a piece of parchment, Rashi says without sirtut. Sirtut means if you ever look closely at a Sefer Torah, you will notice that there are lines that are etched into the parchment. That's called sirtut. So the Gemara says if you write it on the parchment without sirtut, it's possible. How do I know that? The Gemara says b'sefer amrachmana, because the pasuk says ultimately again you have to write it. You have to write it b'sefer. You have to write it in a sefer. And sefer, by definition, not only means parchment, but also means with sirta. So we'll stop over here. Again, I'm stopping a little bit in the middle because I want to share with you something very beautiful. So there's an interesting idea here that the Vilna Gaon, makes an interesting observation. So the Vilna Gaon says that if you go back to the Gemara, I just have to show you because I think it's so beautiful. The Vilna Gaon says that if you look at the Gemara that said that Avraham Avinu, in the merit of saying that if I'm not going to take anything from Melech Stone, from chut ve'ad seroch, now from literally a string to a shoelace, so he was zocha to the chut of tcheles, to the string of tcheles, and for tefillin, ritzua shel tefillin. So the Gemara says, I understand tefillin because the pasuk says, "V'ra'u kol amei ha'aretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha." The pasuk says the nations of the world will see that the name of God is referring to you. And Rabbi Lazar says this refers to tefillin sheberosh, literally tefillin in the head. So the Gra asks, why doesn't the Gemara say tefillin shel rosh? This refers to that. What do you mean sheb rosh? So like tefillin in the head. So there's an amazing story. So the Gra happens to comment on this, but someone else comments on the Gra. It's actually interesting. So someone else comments on the Gra. It's actually the Pnei Menachem. The Ger Rebbe comments on the Gra, and they tell the following story about the Gra. So I'm just going to tell it to you now quickly, just because of time. So I'll just tell it to you. He says like this. He said, "Shapam achas lon lina laila achas uveis malon. Vahi b'boker amad bala malon lespal shachar sviniach tefillin kidas." So the Vilna Gaon was one time staying over at an inn, and the next morning again there wasn't a minyan. So the Vilna Gaon, the innkeeper who was Jewish, got up to daven shachris. And the Vilna Gaon also got up to daven shachris, so the Vilna Gaon is davening in his room. Suddenly he hears an incredible rash. What happens? A bunch of Gentile thugs came into the inn, and mamish, they're beating up the innkeeper while he's wearing his tefillin. And mamish, he's inches away from being from losing his life. What happens? Listen to this. Vayiftach haGaon es delas hacheder. The Gaon opened up the room in which he was davening. Vayi kasher ra'a habilial azes haGaon zal nifchad ma'od vayipol malei kumasa artza v'yis alef. Literally, when the Gaon opened the door and this thug saw the Vilna Gaon wearing his tefillin, the thug literally fainted on the spot. He fainted on the spot. What happened? So afterwards, the innkeeper asked the Gaon, so why did this thug faint right in front of you? So the Gaon said, Mishum sheras hatfilin sha'aroshi, because I was wearing my tefillin. And the pasuk says, V'ra'u kalamei haaretz, all the nations of the world will see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is upon you. He saw my tefillin, and he fainted. I asks the innkeeper, Gain gamani hispalalti b'tefillin sha'aroshi, but I was wearing my tefillin also. And not only was he not afraid of me, but he was mamish beating me to a pulp. Listen to this. Heishav la'agon. Ata nose asat tefillin al roshecha. Va'ani bisoch roshi. You know the difference between us? Is that you wear your tefillin on your head. I wear my tefillin in my head. What does that mean, Kilomar? Unfortunately, you wear your tefillin. The Gon was a very wise man. He knew people. So you wear your tefillin without kavana. You don't think about it. L'lo machshava, without deeper thought. L'shabit atzmecha lavodas habore. When you wear your tefillin, do you think about the fact that you are subjugating your strength, your physical vigor, your intellectual prowess, that you're giving it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So when you wear your tefillin, you don't think about these things. So listen to, so the Gon goes on. He says maybe the problem is that you wear your tefillin ala rosh instead of sheberosh. And the Pnei Menachem says that's the pshat in the Gemara, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving Avram Avinu a bracha, that his children will not just simply have a mitzvah of tefillin, but that mitzvah of tefillin will impact us, will change us, will leave a roshem on us. And the goal, again, is not to simply wear tefillin ala rosh on the head, but it's to wear tefillin sheberosh, not to wear tefillin alayad, but to wear tefillin shebiyad. Ultimately, again, to take the messages of tefillin. The Maharsha says so beautifully. You know what the message of tefillin is? I put it on my muscle, right, which represents my arm, which represents my physical vigor. I put it over my mind, which represents intellectual vigor. And remember, on the shalyat, it's facing towards my heart. So in the midst of tefillin, I touch upon emotion, my heart. I touch upon my physical strength, and I touch upon my intellect. And what I'm saying is, I'm going to take all three of these things, which are the most important things in my life, and I'm going to use them in Avodas Hashem. I'm going to use my strength, I'm going to use my emotion, and I'm going to use my intellect to somehow better serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to somehow better serve my world. That's the message, and that's the choice. The Gaon urges us to not go through life. It's tefillin and it's mitzvos. Don't wear tefillin and don't do mitzvos ala rosh, but rather we should be zochem miratz Hashem to do all of our mitzvos, our tefillin, including everything else, sheberosh. All right, we'll stop over here. I'm sorry? I didn't want to put it in his head. That's true.